How to edge sleeves with the cuffs, decorated with buttons and buttonholes. We've already cut the sleeve. This is just a mock-up. Do not forget that you will have to use 2 sleeves. The cuffs are going to be pretty narrow. When finished, it will be 2 cm wide. We cut the detail 5 cm wide and a piece of the interfacing material of the same size to double it. Be very attentive. The interfacing material should be cut on the lengthwise grain to prevent the cuff from stretching. We've also made the bias binding for edging the slits. The slits will be made in the center of the sleeve. First, we need to mark the center sleeve. We need to do it in order to be able to draw the slits. They are going to be 7 cm long. You can make them as long as you want. Cut the slits according to the drawn lines. The width of the bias binding for edging the slits is 2.5 cm, and for the loop, 2 cm. These details were cut on the bias. First, we are going to edge the slits. Attach the binding to the opening this way. The details should be joined face to face. We are going to stitch them from the wrong side. Do not forget to make back stitches in the beginning and the end of the seams. The width of the seam is 5 mm. Be very attentive. When you reach the corner, make the seam just 1 or 2 mm wide. On the other side, the seam should be 5 mm wide as well. Do not forget to make the back stitch in the end of the seam as well. This is how the seam looks like now. The width of the seam is 5 mm. This is the wrong side of the sleeve. Notice that the seam is 5 mm wide at the edges, but it's just 1 or 2 mm wide at the corner. This is how the slits should be stitched. This is very important. Let's make the bias binding for the second detail right away. This one is 2 cm wide. Fold it in half. This detail should be round. This is why it should be stitched differently. We'll make the seam 5 mm wide at the beginning, and then we'll make it tighter, about 2 or 3 mm wide. If the fabric you're working with is thin, make the seam more thin as well. Have a close look at the way Nataly is working. The width of the seam should be 2 or 3 mm wide. Make tiny stitches. Have a close look here. There's kind of a funnel here. The stitches are tiny. The width of the seam is just 2 or 3 mm. Next, we need to cut the extra pieces from the detail, and then turn it right side out. Cut the extra pieces from the seam allowance as well. Don't cut too much, this is very important. Save some fabric to fill the tube. Nataly is going to show you the most simple way for turning this detail right side out. First, we need to thread a needle. Notice that this is a needle for the sewing machines. Thread it with the threads which were used for stitching. Make a knot here. Put the needle into the hole
иглы колбочкой будем выворачивать эту колбочку
and pull it to the other end.
в наш рулик. И аккуратно.
Be very attentive, please.
Именно для этого
This is why we made the seam a bit wider in the beginning.
такой маленький секрет.
For us to be able to do that without any problems.
Конечно,
This is a time-consuming process.
очень аккуратно.
Be patient.
И идем на утюг. Теперь
When you turn the detail right side out, go to the ironing desk.
мы срезали лишнее. Немножко,
This detail should be stretched. Not much, just a bit.
наверное, заполнилось внутри. Отлично.
It should be accurate and its sides should be even.
Делаем. Нам нужно
We also need to iron the bias binding stitch to the slit. Be very careful when ironing the detail. This is the right side. Next, we need to fold the binding and iron it this way.
делать никаких.
Make sure that you don't make any folds or waves. Next, we need to double the cuffs with the interfacing material. The direction of the lengthwise grain in the main fabric should match the direction of the lengthwise grain in the interfacing material. The detail shouldn't stretch after being doubled. Let's fold one of the edges and press it. The width of the folded edge is 5 mm.
А с другой стороны будем притачивать 0,5.
There will be a 5 mm wide seam on the other side.
2 сантиметра.
The cuff is going to be 2 cm wide.
Пополам.
Next, we need to fold the cuff in half and press it once again. Leave one of the edges open.
Все, что нужно было
Very nice.
Но
Let's go back to the sewing machine.
идем за швейную машинку. Прежде чем
Before we move on to working with these details,
нам
we need to finish edging the slit. First, we need to cut the extra pieces from the binding. Next, Nataly is going to tack it.
косую бейку. Чтобы
We'll show you how to do it.
огибаем косую бейку.
Fold the bias binding in such way that it covers the edge, and then take it.
Мы заметываем так, чтобы дать потом строчку на 0,1 по краю бейки. Можно сделать
We're taking the detail in such way that we will be able to stitch it with 1 mm wide seam.
хочется, так и будете делать. Когда заметываете
You can stitch in the ditch if you want to.
Для этого и нужно было...
This is why we iron the binding. It's much more convenient to work with it this way.
Вот как
This is how the tacked bias binding looks like. Let's go back to the sewing machine.
перестраиваем
We're going to make regular stitches.
стежок. С лицевой
Stitch the details from the right side.
побей.
The width of the seam is 1 millimeter.
Если вы хорошо заметали,
If you tack the bias binding accurately, the seam should be done neatly both on the face and the wrong side.
с изнаночной стороны,
Have a close look here.
чтобы и с лицевой стороны
This is how the seam should look like. It's absolutely perfect.
была строчка.
It's accurate both on the wrong and the right sides.
Наметку.
Next, we need to remove the tacking.
Сейчас
Let's go back to the ironing desk.
отутюжим
The stitch details should be ironed.
работу. Будьте внимательны, как они утюжатся. Они
Watch what Nataly is doing very attentively.
одна
This is how the binding should be ironed.
срезаем лишнее.
Cut the extra pieces.
Делать вот здесь маленькую.
The only thing we need to do is to fix this point.
Идем за швейную машинку, продолжаем работать.
To do that, we need to go back to the sewing machine.
Обратите
We need to make just a couple of stitches here. Notice that Nataly is making the stitches on the bias.
Сделали
That's
завязку
it.
немножко наискосок.
We fixed the corner.
Начать шов рукава.
Next, we need to stitch the underarm seam.
В нашем случае,
When it's done, we'll move on to working with the cuffs.
поэтому
I remind you that this is just a mock-up.
и мы не будем делать оверлок.
This is why we're making just one sleeve. We're also not going to edge it with an overlocker. The width of the seam is 1 centimeter. First, we need to pin the cuff to the sleeve. Be very attentive when doing it. Do not unfold the details. You can either tack or pin the details.
Может быть, у кого-то будет
You might want to make pleats or gathers here.
щипы или сборки.
They should be ready by this time.
Они у вас уже должны быть готовы.
The details are pinned, so we can stitch them next.
Проверить, что эта часть
Make sure that you're doing everything accurately. Check if the bias binding is folded to the wrong side, and then start stitching. The width of the seam is 5 millimeters. As I've said, you can make gathers or pleats in the sleeve. They would look absolutely amazing.
не будет очень красиво.
Such sleeves would look good made both of light and strong fabrics. Do not forget to make back stitches in the beginning and the end of the seams.
Проложили строчку.
Nataly has stitched the details. Next, we need to iron them.
Срезаем нитки.
Cut the extra threads, and then iron the details.
Очень аккуратно.
Be very careful when pressing.
Потому что нам нужно и шов рукава с манжетом на
The seam should be directed towards the cuff.
в то же время наш заутюженный манжет нужно не сломать. Очень аккуратно.
You should always be careful and attentive when ironing the details from the right side. This is how the cuff looks like now. It's unfolded.
И с изнаночной стороны давай посмотрим. Вот, шов
We've pressed the seam to the cuff side.
заутюжили в сторону манжета.
This edge is also folded and pressed.
У нас будет строчкой.
We'll make a seam here later.
манжета. И сейчас нам нужно
But first, we need to edge these edges.
петельку.
If you make gathers or pleats, be very attentive when ironing the cuffs.
Тогда вы будьте внимательны, когда
Do not spoil the gathering.
эту часть, чтобы здесь у вас не сломать всю вашу сборку, чтобы она у вас не сутюжилась. Вам нужно будет очень аккуратно
This is very important.
по манжету. Сейчас
Let's go back to the sewing machine.
обрабатывать вот эти края,
We need to stitch the edges.
вставлять петельку. Чтобы
A loop should be located on the front side of the sleeve.
это должна быть петля. Нужно
Here it
посмотреть,
is.
где у рукава передняя часть.
This is where we're going to make a loop.
Здесь будет петля. Вначале мы
First, we need to edge the back side.
которой петли нет. Для того, чтобы
To edge this detail, we need to fold the cuff face to face.
вот этот срез у нас уже
Have a close look here.
а с этой стороны
The both edges are directed to the cuff.
в сторону манжеты. Поэтому оба среза смотрят в сторону манжеты. Намечаем.
Draw a line for stitching. Even though the seam is tiny, make back stitches in the beginning and the end of it. That's it. Cut the extra pieces. Next, we need to turn the angle right side out. One edge is ready. Be very attentive.
Чтобы край манжеты
Make sure that it's accurate.
на одной линии.
These lines should be absolutely straight.
Стороне манжеты там у нас
Next, we need to edge the second side.
петля из руля.
We're going to make an eyelet here.
Наметили
Draw a line for stitching.
строчить. Сейчас к этой линии нужно пристрочить петлю. Это нужно сделать до
And attach an eyelet this way.
сам манжет. Немножко
It's very important to do it before stitching the cuff itself.
делаем только для того, чтобы нам было удобно дальше работать.
Be very careful. It's a delicate work.
Тонкая работа.
The result will be worth it.
Сейчас мы ее просто
Nataly fixed the eyelet.
дальше удобно.
Next, we need to fold the sides of the cuff face to face.
Очень аккуратно. Небольшая
And then
замена.
stitch this side. Do not forget about the back stitches.
Здесь также важно, чтобы
It's very important for the cuff and the slit to be on one level.
был вровень
Do not forget to cut the extra pieces from the seams.
лишнее. Одну часть срезаем среза.
Next, we need to turn the cuff right side out.
И выворачиваем.
Very nice. Let's go back to the ironing desk. Iron the details carefully and attentively.
Отутюживаем. Вот сейчас, если вы
Use a
сомневаетесь,
ruler
возьмите
to make
деревянную
sure that the cuff and the slits are accurate.
чтобы край манжета совпадал с разрезом. Вот такие
The
мелочи
quality
очень важны
and general look of your garments depend on such small details.
вашего изделия. Вторую сторону.
Iron the second side the same way.
Здесь у нас хороший.
It's very important to be careful and attentive.
Все, мы уже.
The details are almost ready.
Осталось заметать манжет.
Next, we need to tack the cuff once again and stitch it.
Идем за швейную машину.
Let's go back to the sewing machine.
Заметываем манжет.
Nataly is taking the cuff.
С лицевой стороны.
She is taken right in the ditch. The width of the seam on the wrong side is 1 millimeter.
Один.
Be very attentive, please.
Обязательно нужно манжет.
It's very important to tack the cuff before stitching it. Don't be lazy.
Не ленитесь
Handwork allows you making amazing high-quality garments.
процесса пошива. Заметали манжет.
Nataly has tacked the cuff.
Стороны в канав.
Have a look at the right and the wrong sides.
Сейчас также
The width of the seam on the wrong side is 1 millimeter.
аккуратно под швейную машину.
Next, she is going to stitch it.
Нужно, чтобы с лицевой стороны
Stitch right in the ditch on the face.
канавку, а с изнаночной
The width of the seam on the wrong side should be just 1 millimeter.
мы заметывали. Сейчас
Be
нужно
very accurate and attentive.
не наехать ни на манжет, ни на рукав.
Do not forget to make a back stitch.
Большую закрепку. Аккуратно
Have a look at the seam. It's very neat.
с лицевой стороны в канавку.
We stitched right in the ditch on the right side, and the width of the seam on the wrong side is 1 millimeter. Remove the taken and cut the extra threads.
Сейчас сразу
Next, we need to attach a button here. When it's done,
окончательную утюжку.
we'll iron the cuff.
Отмечаем.
First, we need to mark the location of the button.
Красивая у нас французская пуговичка.
As I've said, when the button is attached, we'll go to the ironing desk to iron the cuff once again.
Несколько стежков.
This is how the button should be attached.
Конечно, наша пуговичка
The button is pretty big, so you can see everything clearly.
хорошо попала в цвет.
This is how the cuff looks like now.
Такая петелька и пуговичка.
Let's go to the ironing desk. It's time for the final ironing.
Окончательная утюжка манжета. Самое приятное, что
I like it that the cuff looks good both from the right and from the wrong sides. If you do everything just like we show you, you will also be able to make such amazing details.
Ну, хорошо.
This is how the sleeve looks like now.
Главное точность.
It's very important to be accurate and attentive when you do such delicate work.
Откладывать.
We were glad to show you this technique. I really hope that you'll find this video useful.
Тогда будет такой результат хороший.
That's all for today. Be different and beautiful. We're Ira and Nataly.
Рукава узким манжетом.
Buy our courses, subscribe to this channel, write comments, share the videos, press the like and the bell buttons. We would really appreciate your support. Thank you. Goodbye.